Well, alrighty then. It's the wee hours of Wednesday morning, and time for an old man yapping. So, do the little YouTube dance, like, comment, subscribe, all that happy horse shit. It is Jubilee season. I'm not sponsored by Deschutes Brewery, but I don't need to be. This shit is awesome. It's fucking amazing. I wait for it all year long, and when it comes out, I'm like, oh yeah. Ah, the Jubilee is here, finally. A festive winter ale, they call it. I fucking love this stuff. So, I've been doing the Marc Brunet Learn to Draw in 30 Days challenge. And I just did day 10 today. And I figured all of this stuff out on just a couple days ago, actually, where in order to get this finished in time and have things go into the proper places, 30 days is not easy to fit into a weekly schedule. So what I have to do is I have to do 8-day weeks, which means that what I'm doing is on Monday when I do the showing up thing on Mondays, I do 2 days. I do one. Well, I actually kind of do. It's kind of like doing 2 of them on Sunday, because I do one of them kind of late on Sunday evening, and then I do the next one. I do the next one during the showing up stream, or video rather, and then I do another one later on that day after several hours, probably after going to sleep and having a nap. But I have to do 8 in a week, which means I'm a day ahead right now, and I'm going to get 2 days ahead later. And I think Mark actually started his reference run through of the lessons on the 1st. So he's doing it the 1st through the 30th, which means that he's on like day 7, and I'm on day 10, because I started a little early. Yeah, that's the way I am. But I've been looking at the way that he structures the lessons, because I'm doing it a little different, as I've gone over before. I'm doing the Learn to Draw in 30 days, and the Learn to Draw Faces in 30 days, and the Learn to Draw Characters in 30 days, and I'm doing them all at once. Just probably a bad idea. But I'm doing it for different reasons. When I went over all of the lessons for the Learn to Draw in 30 days, I went, I can do all of this shit, no problem. I may as well do it, just to reinforce, we all get the imposter syndrome, you know? So because we all get the imposter syndrome, it's a fairly good idea to jump in there and say, let's go through a basic course and just prove to ourselves that we can do everything in the basic course. If you can do everything in the basic course, if you've got a Learn to Draw in 30 days course and you go through it in the 30 days and every day's exercise is just like, this is easy, you know how to fucking draw. And if you do that with 3 or 4 people's courses, you definitely know how to fucking draw. And that can really slaughter the imposter syndrome, is the idea that's going through my head, because I keep sitting here, I don't feel like I'm doing good work. I feel like the work that I'm doing is just garbage. And I'll do a piece and I don't want to show it to anybody, and I don't want to do anything like on video. I don't want to show people what I've been working on, or show people what I did the other day, or show people how I work. I've developed this tremendous feeling of inadequacy around my art for no good reason. And I'm trying to push myself out of that. I think a lot of people run into that. I think that's a thing a lot of people deal with. And this is the effort that I've chosen to try and drag myself out of this. And I went, okay, here's the Learn to Draw in 30 days. Yeah, all of this stuff is easy. And I looked at Learn to Draw Faces in 30 Days. And it was like, this is all pretty easy too. It's not as easy as I thought. Because there are two things that happen. When you go through something that you think is going to be easy, you either learn that it is in fact easy, and you do in fact know what is in the lessons, or you learn that it's really not that easy and you actually needed the lessons, so it's a good thing you took them. The Faces one is kind of it's kind of a mixed bag. I feel like I'm kind of there on most of it, but there's some stuff I'm not very good at that the lessons are forcing me to kind of confront and go, you're not very good at that. You should work on that. But to learn to draw characters, oh God, that is kicking my arse up and down the street. Oh my God, it's vicious. Every single thing I do in that third course is just like, I did a crap job. But I've been posting my results on Blue Sky, and I'm going to continue posting them on Subscribestar, and I'm gonna be talking about it on these last few videos because this is kind of the thing that I'm doing, and I want to use this to sort of focus. I want to kind of focus my my efforts and go, you know, I got to buckle in on this art because the art is the thing that I'm really not good at. Okay, the audio, I'm fairly good at audio and music. I have the training. That's I tried to major in music when I went to university, and I discovered that I was much less talented than the people around me. And I was not used to that. So I thought that was a bad thing, and I should stop. I'm not used to walking into a classroom and not being the smartest person in it. I understand if there are like one or two people that are as smart as me, which is usually the kind of thing that I ran into. But my whole way through high school, and I graduated a couple of years early, so I was ahead the whole way through. My whole impression throughout high school was I go into a classroom, there might be one or two people as smart as me, but there's never anybody smarter. It just never happened. Well, except Phil Pinkston. Phil Pinkston was smarter than me. But he was smart in a slightly different way, so we were complementary to each other. We had different views of the world and different views of how things fit together. But he is definitely smarter than me. And he was much better at getting along with people than I was. But yeah. Phil was a cool guy. I kind of lost touch with everybody. I was a military brat. We moved around all the fucking time. I went to so many goddamn schools. It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, I went to university and I just wasn't used to walking into a room and not being the smartest person there. And when I walked into the music room, it didn't really occur to me that some people had already been taking classes in that room with that professor for a couple of years. It just didn't cross my mind somehow. It was a weird situation. So the idea that so many people were so much better than me at so many things, I kind of walked away from it. I did take a couple of classes in the audio field, multi-track recording. I took a class in back in the days of splice blocks and razor blades and mylar tape and reel-to-reel. And that was supposed to prepare me for something resembling a career in the audio industry. And I was right at the beginning of the digital revolution, so I wasn't really familiar with Tascam DATs and all of that shit. But yeah, I did get a basic training in that, and my sound design skills are fairly good. They're not as good as I'd like them to be, but a lot of it is just not trying. I'll go, I want a sound that does this, and I don't actually do the work of breaking it down and going, well, how is that sound constructed? What are the components of it? What are the envelopes? What are the effects? What are the frequency components of it? I don't really ask those questions. I just kind of go, well, let me see if I could find a sound that's like that. If I could find a sample, then I could start from that, and I can work with that. I'm very good at working with samples. DJ samples, you know. But working directly from first principles synthesis, I can do it. I have the training. I have the understanding. I just really don't, because it's so easy to find what I'm looking for. And I don't know. I feel like in the audio and music portions of the videos, I'm going to start out going over some basic music theory, just to like make sure that we get on the same page about stuff, and kind of talk about notes, intervals, harmony. Well, intervals kind of covers harmony. And then there's how you form chords, and the different kinds of seventh chords. and after I go over all of that, I'll be able to go over like modal theory and scales, and just kind of produce a kind of basic vocabulary all the way at the beginning that people can go back and refer to. And it should be pretty simple. It shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 weeks. You know, I mean, you can cover the notes in the interval. You can cover like the broad strokes in one show, and then just kind of go into more detail as you move through the month. And probably like the rest of this year will end up being taken up by basic musical concepts and theory and ideas of what melody is and how different things fit together in a mix. And that's basically just to give you some idea of what it is that I'm working with and how I think about stuff as I'm putting this stuff together. And the programming part, I know the programming part. God, I've been programming for 20 odd years. I'm programming in C++ for 20 odd years. I'm programming in general for almost 50. That's fucking ridiculous. The idea that I've been doing anything for 50 years is just fucking ridiculous. I wrote my first actual computer program that was supposed to like do a thing when I was 6 years old. Not so much because I was a prodigy as because I would like dug into books and did dumb shit as a kid. And that was back in the days when everything was still assembly language, so everything was very basic, and I was feeling all proud of myself because I wrote an integer sort routine. And I was trying to get it down as small as I could. And I got it down to like 36 instructions or something like that, which is like the tightest and smallest I could get. I was very proud of that until I found out much later that it could be done in 29. Man, I wasn't as good a programmer as I thought I was when I was 6. I don't know. I look back on that and I go, it's kind of fucking amazing. I mean, just that I had access to that sort of stuff. Just that I got to go and hang out in a university computer lab with people that hacked around on computers. And I was constantly bothering them. So one day, one of them like took me into a back room, and he sat me down and he said, "This PDP-10. Here is how you boot it up. Here is the manual." And he just left me in there, and I was in fucking heaven. It's like that's my idea of a good time. You give me a machine and a manual and just let me play. I'm happy as can be. And yeah, they were very concerned looking for me. And when I realized they were looking for me, I came out of the back room and he was like, "You've been back in there this whole time?" Well, yeah. And then I became like a mascot or a pet. I spent a lot of time being a mascot or a pet for various people. And that kind of began that whole journey for me. And I didn't really get to do a whole lot with it for a couple of years until I got hold of my first VIC-20. I got hold of I mean, I had a TI-99 4A and I had a Trash 80. But those weren't all that capable. The most I did was play the Scott Adams text adventure games on them. That was it. But when I got my VIC-20, I started programming in BASIC, and then later I got a Commodore 64, and I remember bothering Ward Christensen on his BBS to give me the code for it so I could run my own BBS, and he eventually relented and sent that over to me, and that was fun. I ran bulletin boards all the way up into the mid to late 90s, actually. I think it was around 94 that I found it. No, it would have been 96 that I shut everything down, because I had just gone to all the trouble of migrating my machines to Windows 95. But we didn't have Windows 98 yet. So I didn't have that to upgrade. Anyway, I'm just kind of rambling here, which is what it says on the tin, old man yapping. It's been 50 years since I did that thing I used to do back when I was a youngin'. I used to do the thing, and this is the thing that I used to do, and nobody gives a shit, but I'm old, and all I ever do is think about the old stuff that I did. There's so much of my time is taken up with going, man, I remember that thing that I did that time. When I was younger, my time was taken up with stuff that I was doing right now. And now that I'm older, my stuff is taken up with going, I remember I did a thing once upon a time. I used to do cool things back when I was younger. I don't do many cool things anymore. I do boring things like work on my art, work on my music, and work on my game. And those things aren't cool until you're good at them, you know? It's like, I don't know, were any of the things that I did cool? Like when I was young, when I was in my 20s, was the stuff I did in my 20s cool? I don't know. Maybe. I don't remember. It's been 50 years since I did that. The art is the thing that I really feel inadequate about on this game. And I've actually, you know, there are two things that I wanted to kind of go over tonight, and one of them is Marc Brunet's lesson layouts are actually pretty good at something that I remember my art teachers in school being good at. They would look at the work that you did and they would go, okay, looking at what you just did, I can point you in the direction of what you need to go learn. And Marc has designed a lesson plan where you do something one day, and then the next day you do a variation on that. And by putting them right next to each other, but separating them by a day, Marc kind of forces you to look at the difference in doing it this way and doing it this way. And without looking at your art at all, he communicates that one of those things you need to work on. And he does a lot of stuff where he says work from reference. And I feel like he kind of ping-pongs back and forth between work from reference, work from imagination, to show you, look, number one, when you work from reference, you do a better job. And number two, once you get used to working from reference, once you get past your objection, now that your teacher's telling you to do it, so it's okay. It's not cheating because your teacher told you to. And once you really internalize that working from reference is good for you, maybe you'll stop regarding it as cheating and you'll start working from reference like an actual fucking artist. Real artists always use reference. They use it all the fucking time. The only time an artist doesn't use reference is when they've done the same thing over and over and over and over, and ecological rationality kicked in, and now they don't need it because they have all the reference in their head. So you get somebody like Kim Jong-gi or Jim Lee or Mark Silvestri or Michael Whalen. They've done so much very similar work that they will sit down and they will just dash out a thing from imagination, and you're like, fucking hell, he just made that up out of his head. Years of practice and study is what that is. And if you don't put in the years of practice and study, you can't do that right out of your head. That's not a skill that you can learn. That's a talent that you gradually work yourself into. That's straight up experience. I would really like another beer, but I'm not going to have one. God, Jubilee is good. I really, really like it. It's like, most beer is just kind of like acceptable. It's an adequate delivery mechanism for alcohol. But Jubilee, I actually like. I actually think it's good. It's got a crisp, dry flavor. It's very hoppy, and it's got a bit of a berry taste on the back of the tongue. It's very wintry. It reminds me of those little hard red fruits you occasionally see on trees that you shouldn't eat because they're poisonous. But it reminds me of them. It gives me this kind of, it is a very wintry sort of beverage. Anyway, that was the one thing I wanted to talk about was Marc's arrangement of his lessons, which is just very admirable. He's done a really, really good job of it. And I love seeing people doing a good job. That's awesome. I fucking love that. Because there are other people, like you know what, I'm not going to name names. There are people who are coaching others that don't really know what they're talking about. All they know is what worked for them, And they're forgetting that whole you can't stand in the same river twice because it's not the same river and you're not the same you. And a lot of these people have they've spent the last 5 years building something up and they're like, let me tell you what worked for me. And that worked 5 years ago, but it doesn't work now. Especially when you're talking about any kind of managing an online presence, managing social media. Social media in 2025 is not the same as social media in 2020. The audience on social media is not the same. The social media itself is not the same. Nobody was on Mastodon in 2020. Blue Sky wasn't even a thing in 2020. Everybody was on Twitter. Twitter's now gone. It's X, and it's run by fucking Nazis. So the advice that worked back then, I mean, especially when, if I were to teach a course on how to blow up on social media, I would be talking about how to blow up on Facebook in 2012. Facebook is still there, but it's not the same Facebook we had in 2012. None of my advice is going to work there now. Especially since Facebook now owns Instagram instead of competing with it. Which is a whole different thing. How to succeed on Instagram will be very different now that Facebook owns it. Everything has changed. Everything is different. Everything moves so fast that the stuff that worked for you isn't going to work for new people. And there are so many people teaching that way. And that's why I love when people like Marc actually do a good job of teaching what matters. That's fantastic. I love that. But he's not trying to teach you how to succeed on social media in 2015 or whatever. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I bought a few games at the Steam Autumn Sale. I got the Gnorp Apolog. I guess we just making up names now. Just making up words. I got Idle Colony, which I had played the demo. I felt like the demo was crap, but I also thought chances are very good that the demo is crap because they want you to buy the full game. And I also got Tower Wizard. Now, Tower Wizard, I played the shit out of for about 20 hours and completed it. Got all of the achievements and everything. And that was a fun game. Idle Colony still sucks. I don't like it. This is just me. I personally don't like it. Somebody else might like it just fine. It's not a bad game. And then there's the Gnorp Apolog, which I haven't quite wrapped my head around yet. I don't really feel comfortable in that game just yet. Idle Colony, I kind of figured out after a few minutes. Tower Wizard, I figured out after a few minutes. This Gnorp thing, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't feel like I understand what I'm supposed to be doing or why I'm supposed to be doing it, and it seems awkward and weird. And I found it interesting because the developer of Tower Wizard states outright that he was inspired by the Gnorp Apolog, which is why I picked it up. And Idle Colony was in a bundle with the Gnorp Apolog. I thought Tower Wizard looked good. And I looked at the Gnorp Apolog and I went, I don't get it, but, the developer says that he was inspired by it, so... And these come in a bundle, so maybe I should get this bundle. But the Gnorp Apolog also came in a bundle with Idle Colony. And I was like, huh. I should get that bundle and then go back and get the Tower Wizard bundle with Gnorp, and I'll already have Gnorp, so it'll just give me a discount on Tower Wizard. And that's what I did. I ended up paying I think it ended up being like $11 for all 3 games, which was a good deal. And I don't feel like I've gotten my money's worth out of Idle Colony or Gnorp. But I do feel like I got $11 worth of enjoyment out of Tower Wizard. Even though it was just like 2 days of play. It was a lot of play. Well, a lot of it was just like leaving the game run, because, you get to a point where it's like, you have to gather up enough points to prestige, and you're generating points by letting this process run for a long time. So I was like, I'll leave it run and I'll go to bed. I went to bed and I woke up and there were points and I prestiged, and then I played from that point. So that worked out fairly well. But one of the things I found interesting about these 3 games is that all 3 of them are very simple kind of atomic entities that do a little bit of fairly easy to program work. And it's cool to look at. And they just go through a series of very simple kind of behaviors. Like in Idle Colony, you put down a house, and a group of colonists come out of that house, and those colonists will go to a tree, pick fruit, and then throw it into a pan. And that's all they do. That's the whole thing that they do. They pick up fruit until they have all the fruit they can carry, and then they go throw it into the pan until they run out of fruit, and then they go back to a tree and pick fruit until they have all the fruit they can carry. And they just kind of go in a loop doing that. They just do that over and over again, and there are dozens of them, hundreds of them eventually as the game progresses. And that fairly simple thing turns into this complex system that you're watching, because you have the colonists that are picking the fruits out of the trees, and you have the foresters that are going out and cutting the trees, and you have the engineers who are building towers, and you have the farmers who are collecting fertilizer. And all of this is very small, simple things that do one job over and over again. They go, they do the job, and they finish. And they go and do the job again. They just keep doing the job in a little loop. But when you have like 800 of these things running around on screen, it's interesting. It's fascinating. You start to see patterns. You start to see this movement of groups. And you start to imagine this kind of emergent community. There isn't one. They're all behaving perfectly independently. They have nothing to do with one another. They don't communicate. They don't interact. They just do their one thing that they do, and that's it. And the Gnorp epilogue is apparently like the same thing. I don't really get how it works, but all of the various individual things, like you hire Gnorps to do this job, and they're actually animated doing that job. And it's the same thing in Tower Wizard. You use spirits to summon workers for different areas, and you see those workers doing their thing in that area. I was just kind of looking at that, and I was going, these individual tiny actors doing their repetitive behavior. It looks complex, but every piece of it is very simple. And I just found that really interesting, because it's similar to Cellular Automata, which is just basically, you have a whole lot of small objects, small entities that take very similar actions over and over again. They operate by a very simple set of rules. And that creates these complex interactions that look very detailed and they look very meaningful. And they're not. It's just these tiny little actors taking tiny little actions, and it looks coordinated, but it isn't. And that should be very instructive to you looking at AI, or what they're calling AI right now, which isn't AI. Large language models are not intelligent. They're never going to be intelligent. Diffusion models, not intelligent, never going to be intelligent. But it's very, very easy to fool human beings into thinking that what they see makes sense. Because we presume everything makes sense. And we go, if this thing makes sense, what would it mean? Sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything. It's just an emergent behavior of the system that is following a series of very basic, very simple rules that aren't very smart, but we're programmed to presume things that look smart are smart. So that's an assumption. Anyway, do a little YouTube dance, like, comment, subscribe, all that happy horse shit. I'm going to bail on this. And, okay, bye.